I'm Lindsay Warden. I'm the Extended Campus and Distance Services Librarian, so I am tasked with making sure we're providing equitable resources and services to our off-campus users. And I'm also the social work subject librarian. And I'm trying out this online workshop series, kind of a webinar series, to try and offer more of our workshops to people who aren't able to come to campus. Today we're going to be talking about effective web searching and evaluating sources. So I have to be honest, I've never actually done a workshop just like this before because we are not going to be going to the library website at all. This is really going to be focusing on using online sources to complement your research. I think one thing that's really important to note as we get started is that if you look at any of the recent studies looking especially what undergraduates are using for research and even some graduate students, a third to half of what they're using is from online sources. So they're using the databases, but not extensively. They're still using news sources, other online sources. And so as a librarian, I can't really ignore and say only use databases. In fact, sometimes online sources are great for complementing your research. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, about how to be an expert searcher. So what we're going to cover is when to use open online sources versus when to use scholarly sources in a research project or paper. We're going to talk about searching tips and how to evaluate web sources. So I wanted to start out with some clarifications and what we're actually going to be talking about today. So I think that people use open and open access and maybe quasi-open access very similarly, but these are not synonyms. So open is in the public domain and it's able to be modified. That means it's Creative Commons, it's not covered under copyright. So an example of these is like open educational resources, like the Open Textbook Library, where you can take it, you can take part of it, you can modify that. Open access materials are what we're going to be talking about today. And these are not only journals that are published open access, but it's also freely available material that's still under copyright. So an example is an article from the New York Times. And then quasi-open access is freely available to current students or faculty via restricted access. And so this is like a peer-reviewed journal from JSTOR. It's not open to everyone, but it's open to you because you have access to it. I also really briefly want to go over scholarly versus popular. We talked about this in the last workshop, but scholarly is really written by and for researchers, faculty, scholars, uses technical language, longer articles about research with full citations, and it's peer-reviewed. This is the biggest difference, the peer review process. While popular literature is written by journalists or writers for general audience, and it uses language that's easily understood by many different age groups and populations, and it tends to be shorter. So when should you use online sources in your research? I think that one of the best times to use it is at the beginning of your research. And this is a great way to sort of start and get an overview of your topic. So think about, you can start Googling your topic to identify new keywords. Maybe you'll get some different search terms that you wouldn't have thought of at first. Learn concepts you're unfamiliar with. When you first start researching something, you may not exactly know what that is. As a librarian, when I'm helping people research, a lot of times I'm not sure what their topic is completely, so I need to spend some time on Google so I have a better idea of what search terms and which databases I need to go to. And it's just a good way to generalize yourself with your topic. It's also really good for narrowing your topic. If you have a big idea, you want to write a paper about global warming, but if you start Googling, start looking at news sources, opinion pieces, you may get a better idea of where you want to focus on. Look at, maybe the agricultural effect and how that affects global warming. And you can always use online sources if your instructor suggests use internet sources. Thankfully, a lot of instructors will tell you whether you need peer-reviewed material or whether you can use other sources in your research. Pay attention to what your instructors use to cite, what sort of sources they bring to class, what you're reading. If you're looking for a web-based tutorial, so this may be through lynda.com or even going to YouTube and, when you're searching how to do this, online is a great place for that. There's a lot of really great web-based tutorials when you're trying to figure out especially a new software or hardware. And another very good time to use online sources is if you need very current information. One thing about the peer review process is it does take time. Something that's just happened in the news last week is not going to have a peer-reviewed article about it. So you're going to have to go find reputable news sources to use in your research if you want to add that into your paper or if you're doing a current event paper. So when should you use your library resources, your databases, your books, your ebooks? If your assignment requires peer-reviewed or scholarly literature, if it specifies that, that means you need to use resources from the library. If you don't feel comfortable evaluating a source or it doesn't pass the criteria we're going to talk about at the end of the presentation. So say you're evaluating a source and you're not sure, that means you probably should not use that source. You need to use something that you're sure it's a reputable source and that you can rely on that for information. If you need assistance, one thing about using a library resource is you're always going to be able to contact a librarian, contact somebody at the library who will help you use that resource, who will maybe tell you if you're having a problem accessing it. If you're online, you're on your own. You know, links can break, things can happen. It's a very, very kind of it's an environment that, you know, you really don't have any protection. If subscriptions are needed, I think we've all been through Google or reading some newspaper or some other site where we run into a login screen. And if it's asking you for a subscription, you need to go to the library because a lot of times we have subscriptions to material. And if you don't have much time, I think that this surprised a lot of people, and you may not believe this, but using the library is going to take less time than Googling and evaluating those sources. So the library is going to be a quicker avenue for research than online sources if you take in the time it takes to really look at the criteria and make sure that source passes the test. What about Wikipedia? So as a librarian, I think this is a question I get all the time. And I'm very torn about Wikipedia because Wikipedia is truly amazing. I mean, it is the largest encyclopedia that has ever been created. It's crowdsourced. It's just an amazing source of information. So what's neat about Wikipedia? If you're looking for background information, it's going to be great. I mean, I think that almost all of us use Wikipedia if we're doing sort of light research. We heard something on the news that we're not sure about, we look it up on Wikipedia. And that's great for your research if you want to find out some background information. If you're looking for finding search terms and keywords, Wikipedia can be great at that as well. You can look at what the different sections, it really breaks out information clearly, it organizes it, and you get a better idea of what you're looking for. Wikipedia also has bibliographies at the end of each article. And these many times are primary sources, really good sources for research. So consult the bibliographies at the end of Wikipedia. That can be a great place to start your research. But what's sketchy about Wikipedia? So entries can be created, added, edited by anyone. I've gone in, edited Wikipedia articles before. Anyone can go in and edit Wikipedia articles before. There's a lot of news articles about people go back and forth. Maybe two factions of some sort of fan club or something will be constantly editing back and forth the Wikipedia page. And you don't know what day you're going to go on it. There's no peer review process. There's no, the larger Wikipedia does not go through its pages, each page, and make sure that it's correct. And there's also a problem of bias. There's many examples on Wikipedia where people who maybe hold certain religious, political, certain beliefs will go in, edit pages, and implement their bias into a page. And that's really important, that it's not a regular encyclopedia. It's not a neutral book. It contains a lot of bias in there. So the internet should never be your only source. This presentation today is really talking about how to use internet sources to complement your research. And I think that this is a really great idea because you want to have multiple viewpoints in a research project or a paper, so sometimes using internet sources can really be a great addition to your scholarly literature you're using. So just briefly, some suggested open online resources. Google Scholar is an excellent one. A lot of even graduate students that I work with prefer Google Scholar over using library databases, and you can easily link your library account, your FSU library account, to Google Scholar. So there's actually information on our website about how to do that. Google Books is another great open online resources. There's tons of books on there that have been scanned and are available to you. InfoMine is sort of like an encyclopedia that can be really useful. It's a reputable online source. Educational Resources Information Center, ERIC, is a U.S. government database that has tons of articles about education, psychology, social sciences. That if it's publicly funded research, a lot of times it has to be mandated that it's available to the public, and they put it in this repository. And another one is the Internet Public Library, which is run by librarians, and it's full of great information, great articles. So there are a lot of sources that are actually made by librarians, made by the government, that are reputable, and these are just a handful. So now I'm really focusing on Google in this presentation. I still think that's by far the most used database, so that I mean search engine, so that's what we're going to be looking at today, and we're going to look specifically at Google search tips. And it's tips to be more effective in your Google searching. So Google Basics, it's not case sensitive. If you know anything about Boolean searching in library databases where you use and, or, and not, it's important to note that you do not need to include the word and in your Google searches. Google is automatically putting the word and in between all your terms, so it's saying all of those terms need to be included in your search. It ignores common words, so how, what, why, the sort of the. It's taking those out of your search, so it really doesn't matter. And it uses stemming technology, which automatically will look for synonyms in some searches. And I also want to say Google is constantly working on their search algorithms, improving their algorithms. So they're working in lots of strange ways, but they're always trying to make searching better and using cool technologies like stemming. So let's start out with using the advanced search, because the advanced search alone is going to offer you a lot of options. And really, if you're familiar with searching databases, it's going to be kind of familiar to that sort of search string that you create. You can combine your search terms. And I'm sorry these images, these screenshots are blurry, but you'll see that it says find pages with all these words, these exact words, any of these words, none of these words. So think of it like Boolean searching for Google. It's and, or, not. You can select where you want your search terms to appear. So do you want it to appear in the site or domain name? Do you want it to appear in the title? You can limit it to a specific domain, and you can search for a specific file type. So one of my most useful tips is searching within a site or domain. A lot of times, especially working with the College of Social Work, I'm limiting to government websites. I want to find things that are .gov. And when I'm looking for library ideas, library literature, what other libraries are doing, I'm always going to use .edu. So to search within a site or domain name, you would use site : and then .edu, .gov, .fsu.edu, and this is going to limit your search to that site. So in my example search I did here, I did Florida Disability Parking Permit, site : .gov, and as you can see, all the sites that are brought up are from the Florida DMV, which is a government website, and then also miami-dade.gov about disabled person parking permits. So it's a good way to make sure you're just looking for government websites, which usually are very reputable sites. Exact phrase searching. So when you're putting in a bunch of keywords, I mentioned that Google is automatically using and. It's not going to make it a phrase. If you want to do phrase searching, you need to use quotation marks to search an exact phrase. So Google also recognizes hyphens, slashes, periods, equal signs, and apostrophes as phrase connectors. So my example that I provided down here is like evidence-based practice. instead of, if I just typed evidence-based practice into Google, it would search evidence and based and practice, but here I'm searching the phrase. And in my screenshot, I did the phrase Doctor Who, and I did that in quotations, analysis. So instead of looking at Doctor and Who in analysis, this is really going to just pull up Doctor Who material. If you want to exclude terms, a lot of times you may be doing a search and you're seeing the same material come up. It's not what you're looking for. Using the minus sign will exclude a term from a specific search. So what I said here, useful example, Mickey minus mouse. And in my screenshot, I did psychologist minus Freud. So it's looking at all the search which don't mention Freud in the results. Searching using OR. So while Google automatically uses AND, you need to add OR in there manually in order to search synonyms. And I think synonym searching is one of the best ways to find what you're looking for, because a lot of times people go in with keywords and they're not thinking about a lot of different terms, and sometimes the example I hear used is teen or young adult or juvenile. If you're just searching teen fandom, you're going to come up with certain results, but if you do teen or young adult or juvenile fandom, you're going to come up with a lot more results that are still all applicable to what you're looking for. For synonym search, another way for Google to automatically search synonyms is to use that little squiggly under the escape key. And that's automatically going to search for synonyms. So for my example, I did squiggly car accident statistics Florida. Well, this won't just look for car accidents, it will also look for auto accidents. And in my screenshot, I did squiggly scary literature. And here I have scary books, and then I have 10 best horror books, 10 novels that are scarier than most movies. So 7 of the most terrifying dystopias. So it's automatically looking for those synonyms. This is really, really useful. The asterisk as a wild card. So asterisks also work in library databases, but you can use the asterisk as a blank to find a missing term or find all words using the root of a word. So my useful example is compute asterisk process. So this is going to look for computer processes or computational processes. It's going to look for all the roots of that word. But another way it can be used in my screenshot, where I have Google asterisk my life. And if you look at the results, they're pretty funny. It's Google is ruining my life. How Google conquered my life. Google changed my life. So you're going to get results, and you're going to get that kind of as a blank word. Search for text in title, URL, text. So you can search for a specific term within either the title of a website, in the URL of a website, or in the text of a website by using in title : in URL : or in text : So I think the in title is the one I probably use the most. So useful example, in title history monastery. And here I did on my screenshot in title Mary Poppins. And so I'm only going to get the websites that have Mary Poppins in the title of that website. Search for related domains. I love this one. I use it all the time. It's like even really hard for me to explain. You can use related : to search for a domain that are similar to one you already know. So mine is related : thenewyorker.com. That's going to pull up all sorts of different sites that have articles or long reads. Maybe I'm looking for an analysis, and I would use that. In my screenshot, I did related : BLS.gov. So that's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And it brought me up the Census Bureau, U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Economic Policy Institute, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So say you found this really cool website, you're on the right track. If you use this related, it's going to show you all the other related domains. It's going to help you find other materials. And you can always combine these tips to create a super search. So use any of the tips above to narrow your search and limit the results that you need. Really, all of these tips are about limiting your results. I think one of the most frustrating things about Google is you get like hundreds of thousands or millions of results sometimes. So it's really about limiting, so you're just getting what you need and what's legitimate for your research. So in mine I did site:/.fsu.edu, squiggly line, online, library, asterisk, services, or help. And then I got Florida State University Libraries, online graduate education, School of Information, list of services from FSU Libraries, the distance library faculty services. So it's just a really great way to sort of narrow what you're looking for. Evaluating web sources. So you've done your searching. You've identified some web sources that are going to be useful. So now it's time to evaluate those sources. And that doesn't just mean looking at it and being like, yeah, it's a legit page. It means actually asking yourself some standard questions and really thinking about whether this is legitimate enough to be used in your research, turned into your teacher as a backing of your ideas. And there's kind of three different things we're looking at: the context, the initial appraisal, and the critical analysis. So the context. First, think about the user context, so your context as a researcher. What are your needs? Why are you using the web and not the library? Can you justify that right off the bat? Can you give a reason why you're using the web other than the library is intimidating? Can you justify using popular sources over scholarly sources? Can you see a reason why this would benefit your research, your paper, your assignment? The web context. Is this a popular web source? Is this something you see cited a lot? Everyone knows it. Everyone knows the New York Times. Has it been used in your course or discipline before? And I said, look at the graphic layout of the website. Does this aid your research? Sometimes, especially maybe in art classes or any sort of graphical classes, you may need to have look at pieces of art, different graphics. And sometimes the website's going to provide that with the library resources, may not. And always think about, is it used in your course or your discipline? So starting out with the initial appraisal, let's appraise the source by looking at the author. What are the author's credentials? This is probably one of the most important questions you can ask. What is the institutional affiliation, background, past publications, experiences? Is the author an expert in this area? A lot of web pages have about. That will either tell you about the author or about the pages. Is this someone that should be trusted with that information? Do they have the experience, the knowledge, the expertise to be providing the sort of information that you're going to bring into your research? Has the author been mentioned by your instructor or cited in your coursework? Have you seen this author in your assigned readings? Is he somebody who's known in your field? Have you seen the author's names in others' bibliographies? If the author is affiliated with an institution or organization, what are the goals of this institution or organization? So a lot of this is looking at bias with the internet. A lot of times people are trying to sell you things. We all know this. So if it's an academic institution, we pretty much, for the most part, no, they're not trying to really sell you something. If it's a company, what does that company do? What are the goals of the company? Next, we're going to look at the date. When was the source published? Is the date easy to find on the website? Sometimes this is no. You can usually find the last revision date at the bottom of the home page. That's not always true. If it's tough to find, this is something that needs to kind of give you some alarm bells. Is the source current for your topic? A lot of the times, people in the science field will say something older than 5 years is not applicable because science is updated so often. If you're looking for a historical source, that may be fine, but just be very cognizant of when was it published, when is that information coming from. So then look, is this an addition or revision? Has the publication been edited or revised? If this is a later edition and you're looking at the 4th edition, that probably means that this has been an important work in the field and it needs to be edited and continue with the changes that's happening in the field. So a lot of times additions are good things. Revisions are also good things. But you may be looking at a site, an article that has been revised since that time that you're reading it. So keep that in mind as well. And do the pages indicate revision dates? Next, let's look at the publisher. Who published the source? What website is it on? Is it from a newspaper? Is it from a company? And what are the goals or missions of the publisher? What's being sort of gained by this being apparent on the web? Always think about that. Next, we're going to actually look at the content and the critical analysis, which is probably some of the most important questions you can ask. So, audience. What is the audience? Who is the author addressing? Who's he talking to? Is he talking to consumers, possible consumers? Is he talking to a scholarly audience? Is it aimed at a very specialized or a general audience? Sometimes if things read really, really elementary, they may not be good to be used in college-level research. And is it too general or is it too technical? Objectivity. This is just probably the most important thing that you really have to look at in all online sources. Is the information covered fact, opinion, or propaganda? Now, I say this in all my presentations. A lot of opinion editorial pieces are amazing, and they can be used in research. I think that they're important to read in current events. You can even use them to sort of make counterpoints against them, but it is very important for you to realize that is an opinion or an editorial. That is not a fact. And propaganda is a whole other level. Is it trying to sell you something? Does the information appear to be valid and well-researched? Did they provide citations? Are they showing where they're getting their ideas from? Are the ideas or arguments more or less in line with other works you have read on the topic? So if you're reading something that's saying something completely different than everything you've read in class, everything that you've heard in your coursework, that should set off alarm bells in your head. It's good to have, obviously, dissenting opinion, but if it's something totally off the wall, this needs to be further investigated. Is the author objective and impartial? And does the article lack bias? This is something that is really hard and really needs to be looked at closely, because a lot of what's written online is biased, and either it could be biased to try and sell you something or sell you on a certain viewpoint, but this always needs to be taken into consideration. Coverage. So does the work extensively cover your topic? Is this a very in-depth work that's going to be very useful for your research, for what you're trying to say? Does it add to the research you've done already? If it's just reiterating what you've already read, that's not really that useful. You want to find something that's adding something new, that's giving you a new idea, letting kind of lightning light bulbs go off in your brain. Does the material use primary sources or secondary sources? So primary sources are, of course, newspapers, audio recordings, photographs, sources from when an event happened. And a secondary source is using that primary source and making some sort of analysis of it. And so always be cognizant of what sort of material is being used in the internet source you're looking at. And for the last critical analysis, is the publication organized logically? Is it written as any other research papers are, with a little review, a body, discussion? If it's some sort of research project, does it describe the methods? If it's a jumbled stream of consciousness, this should be something that you're like, I don't know if this is going to be good for my research. And are the main points clearly presented? Is there a thesis? Is it telling you what they're trying to accomplish in their article? I I think that as you're looking at your internet sources, thinking about what sort of sources you need for a paper, for a project, for your research, you should always make decisions based on your discipline. So look at what's being used in your course. In history, if you're a history major, you're mostly going to be reading books. But if you are, say, in the sciences, you're going to be looking at scientific journals. What's used in your discipline? What is your instructors using for your course or for what you're reading in your course? The types of research questions in a certain field are going to determine the types of sources that can be used in your research. This means sometimes internet sources will be great. If you're doing a current event, you're going to be using internet sources. But if you're doing another more in-depth research project, really think about what makes sense for your particular assignment. Evaluating online sources is a lot of work. It really is. It takes a lot of time to really go through all those questions I just asked you and find that information, read through an article, and then have to decide, is this legitimate? Can I even use this? And a lot of times when you're using online sources, you're going to answer those questions and say, no, this isn't something I can use. I just sort of wasted my time, and it is a lot of work. But FSU Libraries is here to help. So I did a blurry little screenshot of our Get Help page, and we have a lot of options for help. We have research guides, videos and tutorials, frequently asked questions, and of course you can always chat with an FSU librarian or schedule a consultation. We're here to talk to you about what sources work for your assignment, give you advice about databases, or if you want to look at an online source, we'd be happy to help you with that. And I wanted to leave you with one of the resources. We have a research guide about getting started at FSU Libraries. And there is a tab in this guide about evaluating sources. It provides some links as well. There's a lot of great websites out there. Purdue OWL offers one talking about how to evaluate sources. And so I think that if you ever wanted to go and use that as a reference to what we talked about today, I'm also, of course, going to add this presentation to our YouTube page if you would like to go back and use it as a reference. But we're always there to support you at FSU Libraries, help you find the best sources to accomplish your research need. So that's what I have for today. It's kind of a short one, but we didn't, like I said, we didn't go to the library website, and I hope that you learned something about searching, about maybe some tips for Google, or evaluating web sources. And I'm going to leave it open for questions right now, so feel free to open questions. Where is the YouTube channel? So that is going to be the FSU Libraries YouTube channel. If you go to the main library's website, it will be at the bottom of the page. You'll see the little YouTube icon. But if you're just looking for the YouTube channel, that is going to be, the title of the channel is FSU Libraries. So if you search YouTube FSU Libraries, it will be the very first result that comes up. And that's where we have all of our tutorial videos. We also upload our workshop videos as well. I'm going to stick around for a couple more minutes. If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And thank you for attending my workshop. My next one will be in 2 weeks on a Wednesday at 6 p.m., same time, and we'll be talking about plagiarism and citing your sources.